but not all of them. Some of them, they simply decided we have to try to do a couple things differently. So they get heavier in the front seven by moving Mike Purcell in. Shelby Harris goes to the outside. Adam Gotsis no longer starts. Malik Reed ends up playing on the outside. And then Alexander Johnson, who has really become the man of the moment, steps in. That added 70 pounds, by the way, to the Broncos' front seven. Made them a lot more stout against the run and against teams with Melvin Gordon and Derrick Henry. That's pretty valuable. Henry averaged 1.9. One of the things I wanted the Broncos to do in this game was to basically, for lack of a better term, sell out on the run. Blitz regularly. Go ahead and bring guys up in the box and go get the job done there, and then force Mariota and company to beat them over the top. Couldn't let Henry beat them. I think if you were the Broncos and you looked at the guys who could mess with your plan, Derrick Henry was probably number one. I know Mariota had not thrown an interception yet. Threw two yesterday. But the idea was that Mariota probably wasn't going to beat you single-handedly, as the Broncos learned after watching Leonard Fournette put bulldozer trails all over their backs. Derrick Henry potentially could. The Broncos basically did exactly that. They sold out against the run. They absolutely stuffed it again. 39 yards on the ground, following 35 yards on the ground against the Chargers. Really done an impressive job against that run, and that's exactly what you want. You want to make teams one-dimensional. You want to know what they're doing in advance. And if you can stop a team from being able to run, well, then you know you're forcing them into the pass. You know what will happen. Now the Broncos have done a good job with that on defense, and they have won 2 straight. Are you feeling like it's all fixed now? That it was just a slow start? You have new coaches, you have new players, and it was a slow start for this team, and now this is the real Broncos. Do you buy the idea that maybe they should be 4-2 instead of 2-4? I'll be honest with you, I don't. Because I watched those games, and you lost them because you lost them. You didn't make the right plays. You don't get those back. It doesn't work like that. But you go out and win this game against Kansas City on a short week, and Kansas City is down, and Patrick Mahomes looks hurt. Then you can talk about it, because then you'll be 3-4 with 2 more winnable games at Indy and at home against Cleveland. You could conceivably go into the break 5-4 if you're the Denver Broncos, and then you can absolutely start taking the thing seriously. I think now it's a little bit premature to look at it and say, yep, they're good. They're in great shape now. They still have some injuries here. We'll get into the idea of, by the way, it's probably pretty interesting to note that the Broncos defense looks better than ever since they lost Bradley Chubb. I don't think that's causality. I think it's just commonality. I think they'd be better with Bradley Chubb than without Bradley Chubb. But it does sort of speak at times to the idea of what positions are more impactful in the NFL at times. The Broncos have an undrafted player there in Malik Reed, playing 89% of the snaps. And the Broncos are better than they were on defense when they had Bradley Chubb, the number 5 overall pick in the draft. It's not ripping Chubb. He's tremendous. It's not saying the pick was bad. I'm not. But there are certain positions that you can find contributors at more easily than others. Case in point, Alexander Johnson. So I think for the Broncos, this is a good sign. They've played well. The defense has been very good. Worth noting, though, again, they scored 16 points, right? 16. The Broncos scored 16 in a loss to the Raiders, 14 in a loss to the Bears, 16 in a loss to the Packers, 24 in a loss to the Jaguars, then 20 in a win to the Chargers, and 16 in a win against the Titans. That is simply not going to get it done in the long term. So before you get terribly excited and start getting over the moon about, the Broncos they're back, everything's fixed, and the playoffs are on their way. Let's be very honest here about the reality of the situation when it comes to the offense. It is not good. It is not explosive. They have 106 points in 6 games. Their point differential is literally 0. Most of the teams behind them in total points scored have losing records. There are 3 that do not. The Raiders are 3-2. They've scored 3 fewer points than the Broncos. The Bills have played 1 fewer game. If the Bills score 17 in their next game, they'll pass the Broncos. And the Bears are 3-2. They have also played 1 fewer game. If they score 20, they'll pass the Broncos. If the Raiders score 4, they get 2 safeties, they'll pass the Broncos. Those are the only teams with fewer points scored on the season than Denver that have winning records. All of them have had a bye already. The other teams are the 0-5 Dolphins, the 1-4 Jets, the 1-5 Washington Redskins, the 0-6 Bengals, the 2-4 Titans, and that's it. That's the list. The Giants are 2-4. They've scored more points. Jacksonville's 2-4. They've scored more points. The Lions are 2-3-1. They've scored more points. The Falcons are 1-5. They've scored almost 30 more points. But you go to the top of the league and you look here, and I understand defenses are valuable. But the idea that defenses are what win you championships anymore, look, that sounded great if you're Vince Lombardi. But nowadays, that's not the case. You go back and look in the top dozen NFL seasons, and of course, Broncos fans naturally and understandably look at it and say, yeah, but when the Broncos won the Super Bowl, they had a great defense. True. They're a bizarre statistical outlier in the last decade of Super Bowls. You want to get to the Super Bowl, you need a top 10 at minimum, likely top 5 offense. The Broncos are nowhere near that. The Broncos are, depending on what happens to some of these teams with their buys, the Broncos might have a bottom 5 offense. So it's okay to be excited. It's okay to be excited right now. But let's not go bonkers over this. My concept this week is go ahead and beat the Chiefs, and we will have a very, very different conversation. And maybe they can do that. A couple weeks ago, you wouldn't have thought so, but now maybe they can do that. They certainly know the way to do it, don't they? And it doesn't have to do with Joe Flacco throwing a lot of passes. Flacco threw 28 passes in this game. He threw 20 in the win against the Chargers. You can do the quick math. That's averaging 24. 24 attempts. That's it. And doing that, the Broncos are 2-0. The way the Broncos can beat the Chiefs is very easy. Make it dull, make it boring, make it a slog, and just grind it out on the ground over and over and over again. That's their best chance. On the bright side, it increasingly seems like they can do that. But we'll find out, they may have to do it either without or with a limited Emmanuel Sanders. What would that mean? Sanders with 1 catch for no yards, leaves the game with an injury. Find out as the week goes on how effective he will be if he plays or if he plays at all. Deshaun Hamilton got 2 targets and caught them both. Only 25 yards. But the Broncos might need that. And again, I don't believe they're using Noah Fant the way they need to use him. Only tried him 3 times. It's not as if they went to another tight end. They didn't. So the Broncos have work to do on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I don't think they're necessarily a complete product yet, a finished product yet. Keep in mind the 2 teams they have beaten are a combined 4-8. I'm not discounting the wins. You can only play who's on your schedule. But the truth is what it is. They have beaten 2 teams that have lost twice as many games as they've won. The Broncos are undoubtedly trending in the right direction because, well, they were losing to losing teams. Now at least they're beating losing teams. John Wooden used to say back when he was at UCLA, first you lose big, then you lose small, then you win small, then you win big. The Broncos have gone from losing big to losing small to now winning small. But there are still steps to go. It's a Reaction Monday. I want to know what you think. The RamosLaw.com text line is 303-713-1043. You can call in or text in. Talk about it. What do you think? Do you think the defensive problems are solved? Do you think they've got it? Do you think they didn't need Bradley Chubb or Bryce Callahan? Maybe they didn't. Sounds a little weird, but maybe they didn't. Malik Reed was undrafted. He played in 89% of the snaps. Devontae Harris played in every single one of them opposite Chris Harris. Multiple ways to get it done. How do you feel about this team? Let us know. We'll talk more about what the Broncos can do building on this win to make things interesting in a really underwhelming AFC West. I'll show you how bad that really is. The West and really the AFC's entire conference next. It's okay to get excited. It is. I'm not trying to dampen your enthusiasm. You know what? Like, look, I'll tell you this right off. We've all watched these games, right? So winning is more fun than losing. Can we all agree on that one? Like, way more fun. I don't even care what it ends up as. Much more fun. So I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth here. You just want to make sure that, when you go to sleep, a whole bunch of really angry Greeks don't come pouring out of it and burn your city down. But this is the challenge here, I think, for evaluating the Broncos. And I think what we have, truthfully at this point, it is okay to get excited. It really is. They played bad teams. They've beaten bad teams, but those defensive performances have been absolutely legit. They've looked really good. Once Vic Fangio got a big, athletic linebacker in the middle, like he had with Roquan Smith, all of a sudden the Broncos defense got a lot better, even if he doesn't have the pedigree of a Roquan Smith. Worth noting, by the way, in case you don't know the story of Alexander Johnson, he used to go by A.J. Johnson. He was at Tennessee, and he made almost 140 tackles in 2012. Led the SEC. Following year, made another 100-plus tackles and was named the first team All-SEC. Freshman All-American. Really good player. But in November of 2014, he was accused of rape and he was suspended at Tennessee. He had argued for a long time that was not fair, and he had spent time away trying to fight that. Back in July of 2018, he was acquitted of those charges. So in Johnson's case, it's been a very long road. He argued the accusations were unfair, and in the end, he was acquitted. But it also means he didn't play football for almost 4 years. You look at Johnson and think, oh, wow, the Broncos got a young guy. Well, I mean, they do comparatively, but he's 27 years old. He'll be 28 in December. So he does have a good football history, but it's a bit of an unusual story and certainly an unusual roundabout way to get to the league and then to be a starter. But there's no questioning that he had the talent. And now that he seems to be in this position, he's been very successful. The Broncos quite simply cannot go away from him. Josie Jewell cannot start over Alexander Johnson. It's not going to happen. Unless, of course, for some reason, after a couple weeks, Johnson gets figured out, which can happen, by the way, and he's not as effective. But I actually think, given his athleticism and his physicality, I think there is a very good chance that you've got a guy that's the real deal. Is he an all-pro for years to come? I don't know, but I think they've got a starter. And for the Broncos at inside linebacker for a while, that's been enough of a challenge to get a starter at all. A guy that looks like he belongs as a starter in the NFL. That's a win. Want to go over to the RamosLaw.com text line and talk to Dan. Dan, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm in a better mood than I was 2 weeks ago on a Monday.
I think the Broncos have a decent chance. From what I heard, Mahomes is hurt. He might not be as mobile as I know he likes to throw on the run. Maybe he's better doing that in the pocket. If they keep him there, I think they get a pretty good chance of all those weapons still. But I like the changes on the defense. I think Augustus he's kind of a waste anyway, but that's just one move I thought that they're smart to make to sit him down.
Yeah, Dan, I agree with that, and I think that's a good point. I think you made a couple good points, actually. I do think if Mahomes is limited with his mobility, it completely changes not only what the Chiefs do, but Mahomes' comfort level. Remember, this is still a guy that's a reasonably young quarterback, and young quarterbacks, when they can't physically do what they want to do, are even maybe a little more prone to mistakes than veteran guys who have been through it enough times to understand that sometimes you can't be 100% and you find another way to work around it. So I think that that's a very good point. Clearly in the defense, you're right. I thought Adam Gotsis was, I'm not going to say he was a bust. I don't think he was a bust, but I think what they got was an average player. And I think Shelby Harris is a better than average player. And I think the Broncos, quite frankly, did not have a nose tackle at all. So by putting Purcell in, who's a high-effort guy, who is clearly fired up to be back in his home. Remember, he went to he's a Highlands Ranch kid. I think those have worked out. The Broncos needed more bulk, more strength, and they've gotten it. They've gotten it with Johnson, and they've gotten it with Purcell. So I think that you are seeing some things that are real and that are sustainable. And when you look at the nature of the AFC, one of the things I've stressed about their very bad start, and it was a very bad start, one of the challenges that was absolutely going to be part of it, is the fact that it appeared, early on at least, that the Chargers were not going to completely fall off the map from their 12-win season last year. Well, they have. They are a mess. Due to the tiebreakers, they are dead last in the West. They are 2-4, and they look awful. Maybe being without Melvin Gordon hurt them more than they thought, and now Melvin Gordon's working back into shape. Maybe the Chargers will get hot like people think the Broncos will get hot. But at the moment, they're a mess. And they've put themselves behind the exact same 8 ball as the Broncos. They're equally 2-4, but they already have a loss to Denver. The Broncos lost to Oakland. I've said it all year, and I hope that I turn out to be wrong. That, to me, was the unforgivable loss. The Jacksonville one was bad, too. But I will give Minshew credit for going ahead and making plays. Fournette went bonkers. Look, when you run for that many yards, they're earned. I didn't like that loss either. But that one, to me, is more forgivable than the Oakland loss. Denver just didn't look ready to play. That looked like a Vance Joseph coached game. And that would cost them, because right now, if the Broncos had that game, and that game alone, the Broncos would be all alone in second place. So that one hurt them. Fortunately, the Raiders haven't exactly caught fire after that. They have also won 2 straight. But you look at things like point differential and see that they're minus 20. That's generally something that catches up with the team over the course of a season. I don't think the Raiders are that good. I think they are pointing in the right direction, but I don't think they're that good. Check back to me when they're the Las Vegas Raiders, and we'll see if they're better. I think the Broncos can beat them at home in Week 17, and that may loom as a very, very important game. But now, all of a sudden, the idea that you'd have to have 2 wildcard teams coming out of the AFC West and the Broncos as a potential third-place team would have to be better than all the other second-place teams. Well, not so much, which is good, because the Buffalo Bills are still 4-1. So any third-place team is going to have to get over the Bills in second place. And the Bills, by the way, have the same advantage of the Patriots. They play in the AFC East. One of the teams is really bad, and the other is trying to lose all 16 games. So the Bills aren't going away. They look pretty good. The Broncos will get their shot at them on Thanksgiving week. But, fortunately, bad starts by the Browns, a Steelers team that suffered incredible injuries, a Colts team that had Andrew Luck retire, a Chargers team that isn't very good because of holdouts and injuries and a bunch of other things. Everything, basically everything, has broken the Broncos' way in the last 2 weeks. And now, all of a sudden, they have an opportunity. It feels like an opportunity that they have to take advantage of. It's very fun to look at this and say, if they beat Kansas City, they're 3-4. KC would be 4-3. They're right in it, even below 500, and they would be. But if they lose, they're 2-5. And I know that the AFC is kind of breaking bad, if you will. But 2-5 at nearly the half point of the season becomes a pretty hard thing to make an argument that you can pull off. This game is critical. We'll talk more about it next. Okay, we have a new segment for you that we wanted to try here. The idea, right, in sports radio is that it's sort of the dramatized. It's the still, even though it was from the '70s, the WKRP in Cincinnati effect that you just kind of show up and turn on the mic and people just go and whatever happens, it's all stream of consciousness. Well, sometimes that happens, but if you have a show that's good, you do some research in sports talk. You actually do your work. Kevin Kistner Radio in the booth there, and I talk every single day prior to the show. We schedule out the show. Now, I go off topic all the time. That's to Kevin's chagrin because he's the one that came up with a good plan. But, what are you going to do? But, yeah, we go through these and we take a look at some things. And we had a couple ideas. We were talking about, like fans do, like you probably do with your friends, and go, hey, did you see that this weekend? Did you see that person? Did you see that number? Did it do good for your fantasy team? Did you watch that highlight? Whatever. Well, we do the same thing, just like you do. And so we thought we'd debut a new segment we just kind of came up with, and we'll grow it as the weeks and months go on, and we'll make sure that there'll be ways for you to participate too. But we wanted to start with one called Weekend Warriors, where, Kevin, you have a couple, I have a couple, and we'll give you our big one for the weekend.
You want me to start?
Go for it.
All right. Well, Stephon Diggs.
Ooh.
After complaining, I'm not getting no catches.
Speaking about fantasy guys.
Adam Thielen calls out Cousins. All these guys are calling out their quarterback. He goes out yesterday, 7 catches, 167 yards, and 3 touchdowns against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Do you think the quarterbacks hate that when the guy clearly had a point?
Yeah. Okay, I'll get him the ball now.
Of course, maybe he didn't because, Kirk Cousins was getting flack from like every single direction, everywhere. And he goes out there and has 4 touchdowns and 7 incompletions. That is not too shabby. But, yeah, most of those go to Diggs, a 7 for 167, 3. Oh, and, whew, it's on 11 targets, too. Feed the man. Okay, I'll go with mine. And local. We'll stick local here. We're going to go with not Alexander Johnson. He did great. Not Mike Purcell. He did great. But we'll go with Justin Simmons for a couple reasons. Back-to-back weeks with picks for Justin Simmons, first and foremost. Second, Justin Simmons is an unrestricted free agent after the season. So you talk about going and getting the money. That's legitimately going and getting the money. In the NFL, you want to make money as a safety, you need to do some things. You need to make some big tackles. You need to force some fumbles. You need to get picks. Back-to-back wins for the Broncos. Back-to-back picks for Simmons. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, we were talking a couple weeks ago. Hey, maybe you should just let him walk. Find another safety. But back-to-back games, back-to-back picks, you're making this defense move here a little bit for us.
Only problem is the price goes up. Of course, he finishes with 7 or 8 picks. I think the Broncos will be happy to write that check.
Well, maybe they'll sign him now. Maybe they'll sign him before he gets the 7 picks.
You get the Andy Janovich call. You're like, remember what Janovich got? More than that. Can you please call us back?
All right. So I'm going to go with I'll go with Max Scherzer.
Ooh, little baseball. I'm always good for baseball.
These Washington Nationals, not only do they get a win tonight, they're up 3-0 in that series against the Cardinals without Bryce Harper. He goes.
They haven't been with him all season, because he signed with another team.
Yeah.
But don't think that they're not enjoying rubbing that in a little bit.
Save the $300 million.
$400 million.
Yeah.
$400 million.
So he goes out, 7 innings, 1 hit, 11 Ks, 0 earned runs. Right after the night before, when their starting pitcher goes.
Yeah, Anibal Sanchez took the no-hitter into the 8th.
Yeah. So this is the first time in MLB history 2 guys have started a series with 5 hitless innings for a team.
Oof,
so wow. He is my weekend warrior this week.
And people are, Scherzer is almost an old school kind of guy, and you're scared to face him.
He just hits the spots.
Go watch a YouTube and watch how he talks into his glove. Now, don't do it when the kids are around in case they can lip read. But Scherzer pitches angry. He's one of those guys. They tell people, don't do that. You don't want to necessarily pitch. You got to stay calm, stay level. No. Scherzer pitches like he wants to kill you. And he's scary. Guys don't like to dig in.
And he doesn't tip his pitches.
No.
So you'll catch a couple. No. You'll catch a couple guys maybe here and there. That arm movement is the exact same way for a fastball or that slider.
Yeah.
So have fun with that.
And have fun with that Cardinals, because as you pointed out, not only did they take the 3-1 lead, you talk about Sanchez, picked Scherzer, you're correctly so. Strasburg tonight, by the way, Steven Strasburg pitched for the Nationals. All he did was go 7 innings, allow 1 run, not earned, by the way, no earned runs, and struck out 12 without walking any. The Nationals pitchers are just shredding the Cardinals lineup. Oh, and by the way, Howie Kendrick, the guy everyone was
Mr. Grand Slam.
Bryce Harper, who? Howie Kendrick has 9 postseason RBIs.
Unbelievable.
9 already.
Well, the good thing about the starting rotations, they're helping their bullpen out.
Yeah, don't need him too often. When you need him for about an inning a game, it's it's not too bad. Nationals and Scherzer, he's worth the price of admission. Okay, I'm going to go back to local because I think they deserve the credit here. The look, and it happened on Friday, so I'm kind of going to fudge on weekend, but I think Friday night counts as the weekend for most people. Not for you and me. We're working here, but everybody else, Friday night counts as the weekend. The CSU Rams had lost 4 consecutive games. They had obviously been down. They were in a bad spiral. Obviously, you knew about the injury to Colin Hill, ending his career. Will enter Patrick O'Brien. They go on the road against the New Mexico Lobos. All O'Brien does is throw for 420 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks.
That's pretty good.
Boom. Warren Jackson was the recipient for most of them. Stephon Diggs type numbers. 9 catches for 214 and 2 touchdowns.
That's even better than Stephon.
As the Rams go ahead and break that 4-game losing streak, go 35-21 on the road. Go ahead and take out the Lobos. So, hey, good for them. And everyone up there in Fort Collins who was upset. Look, he's the backup quarterback. And now maybe you can really, lay off.
Maybe he sets a spark for this team.
Threw for 420 yards.
Maybe
if it was in Boulder, they'd erect a statue.
Yeah. Maybe he gets this team on a little winning streak now. Maybe they could build something here, and maybe Mike Bobo could add on to his.
That'd be nice because I don't think Bobo's a bad coach, and I think he's coaching for his job.
He's had some bad luck.
He's coaching for his job right now. They play against Fresno on the 26th, so they basically CSU's on a bye week, but they actually get that on a national TV game. ESPNU, a good opportunity for them to go ahead and make a statement, and after that. Look, they have a tough one against the final 3 are nightmares. Air Force, Wyoming, and Boise State. But you get Fresno, you can beat UNLV. It's not basketball. They're not even good at that anymore. So, yeah, good for the Rams and good for Patrick O'Brien. So those were our 4. We had Stephon Diggs with his 167 yards, 3 touchdowns after complaining that he needed the ball, and he was right to do so. Justin Simmons, back-to-back weeks with picks. Max Scherzer just giving the Cardinals nightmares in the NLCS. And Patrick O'Brien of the Rams, backup quarterback, getting it done. Those are our weekend warriors. Next week, when we do this, we'll get ahead of them. We'll have you, our listeners, submit a couple people too. We watch a lot, but we can't watch everything. Only got 2 eyes. Can't watch all of it. Eventually, between eating all the Doritos and sucking down all the sodas and other beverages, you just can't watch all of them. So if you catch something that we didn't, send us yours. Send us your weekend warrior next week. We'll go back to the Broncos. We'll take a look at what they were able to do and what they weren't able to do. It's great they've won 2 in a row, but there are places they can improve, and there are places they need to improve. We'll talk about those next. The Broncos are 2-4. Normally, that doesn't sound like something you'd be celebrating, but it is when your team was 0-4. It's a lot better. It's exponentially better. It's actually, mathematically, it's infinitely better. But it is still 2-4. Still only 1-30 your games. The Broncos have things that they can do better. They are 26th in the league in offense. They have exceeded 20 points in a game one time. They admittedly got 20 in the Chargers game, but they've only gone over 20 once. They have won these two games, averaging 18 points a game, which is roughly what they're averaging on the season. The truth of the matter is that's just not going to get it done if the Broncos believe they can return to the playoffs. It's simply not. And they have been playing well of late. It feels like the offense is doing better. It feels like they're making a difference. Phillip Lindsay in the last couple of weeks, by the way, has really started racking up the yards. He now moves to number 10 in the league in yards from scrimmage among NFL running backs. He's still nowhere near, say, the leader Christian McCaffrey, but that's another world. That's like saying that I'm not quite the basketball player LeBron James is. So, yeah, I get it. But the offense does seem to be moving in the right direction, but it's incremental growth. Again, Flacco with an interception. That's a concern. I watch these games with Flacco, and I look at it, and I say, all right, just the eye test. Don't look at the stats. Don't look at any of it. And I go, all right, he's been okay. But that's all he's been. He's thrown 6 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He has to make better decisions with the ball. Now, I understand some of those are pressures. I get that. But Joe Flacco gets paid $20 million for a reason. He gets paid those dollars because he has to make those decisions. Quarterback's a tough job, but Joe Flacco knows that. You can't be averaging almost a pick a game and have almost a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That is simply not going to get it done. And this is a major concern for the Broncos. I think when you look at how Flacco has played, you'd say the same. You'd probably say the same thing. He's been okay, right? He's been okay. But I think that's also it. It hasn't been particularly special. There hasn't been anything like that. He's just been okay. And so for the Broncos, that's just not going to get it done. There's no way for this to work out if he cannot reduce the interceptions. This team's offense does not score enough points for them to be able to absorb the turnovers. If Flacco can't get the offense, or anybody can get the offense to where they need it to be so it's a little bit more explosive, a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more high scoring, then you cannot afford to make these errors. It's just that simple. So Flacco, let me give you just a couple examples here. The people that are in Flacco's range. And I'll go by percentage of passes that are intercepted, okay? Flacco is at 2.55% of his passes are being intercepted. Phillip Rivers is directly below him, or I should say directly ahead of him at 2.52. Lamar Jackson directly below him at 2.56. In the same area, 2.71 Matt Ryan, 2.84 Dak Prescott. You get to the sides a little bit better of guys that have played more than a couple games. Kirk Cousins at 1.94. Here's the problem. Look at the percentage of touchdowns. This is the percentage of passes that are touchdowns to interceptions. These are around the same guys when it comes to their interception rate. Not the raw number, but the rate. And then you look at their touchdown percentage of the rate. Kirk Cousins, 5.8. Matt Ryan, 5.8. Dak Prescott, 5.2. Even Case Keenum, 5.6. Phillip Rivers, 3.8. And out of all the people I mentioned, Joe Flacco, 3.1. So it's one thing to look at it and just say he's thrown 6 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and go, okay, that's not good enough. But it's a little more than that. When you look and take those raw numbers out of the equation, what you see is that a lot of these players that have thrown roughly the same picks percentage-wise have vastly higher touchdown numbers. Phillip Rivers is the closest to Flacco. He's thrown 6 picks. That's 1 more than Flacco's thrown. But he's thrown 3 more touchdowns than Flacco's thrown. Flacco has not been all that effective a quarterback. And the decisions that you're hoping that he makes, which is avoiding turnover, if you're not going to be explosive, if you're going to be a team that can't even average 20 points a game, the one thing you can't afford is a turnover. If you go look at the numbers, right? The average time you fumble is basically worth 3 points to the other team immediately, based on what they do after receiving the fumble. It's basically worth 3 points. If you throw an interception, because a return can happen, it's worth 4. So Flacco is handing away almost 4 points a game. If you want to be specific about it, and let's look at it in a different fashion, he's thrown 5 interceptions in 6 games, okay? That means he's given away 3.3 points a game on average. The Broncos lost to the Bears by 2. The Broncos lost to the Jaguars by 2. See where the problem is? Flacco is basically surrendering the number of points that have cost the Broncos in 2 of their games. If you just go by the numbers on average, without those kind of picks, you are talking about a different record for this Broncos team. And look, there is more to it than Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is not the problem. But he has thrown an interception in every single game except for the game against Oakland. I pointed out, had an interception against the Bears. On average, that gives away 4 points. The Broncos lost by 2. He threw an interception against Jacksonville. Gave away 4 points. Broncos lost by 2. Obviously, there are dynamics in the game that change. It is not as simple as just plugging numbers into a computer, and I'm not pretending there are. But I'm saying that if you are looking at trends, these interceptions have cost the Broncos games that they otherwise would have won. In theory, you upgraded to Joe Flacco, spent more money, restructured his contract so you are tied to him for 3 seasons. And you could make the argument that he's cost you 2 games. 5 straight games with a pick. His longest streak of games with a touchdown in that span, by the way, is 2. 2. He's thrown more than 1 touchdown in a game exactly 1 time. That was against Jacksonville. He had 3. But Joe Flacco's line, let's look at this. Let's be fair. 18 for 28 for 177 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. That's not good enough. You normally get that performance from a quarterback, and you presume that team lost. He cannot afford to keep making these kind of mistakes. They have cost the Broncos, and they will continue to cost the Broncos if they happen. So he's got to find a way to make better decisions with the ball. I realize that this Broncos team does not have a good pass blocking line. They do not. But part of the reason you get a veteran like Joe Flacco is because he's seen it and he should know where to throw it, where not to throw it, when to dump it. And he hasn't been doing it. At least not enough. Until the Broncos find a way to get better with it, they're going to be running into the exact same scenario. How do you feel about the idea of the Broncos still trading people? This was a big talk the last 2 weeks. My argument was the Broncos shouldn't trade anybody. Was I lucky? Or was I right all along? I mean, I know which one it was, but we'll talk about it next. Broncos still have some work to do, but are making big-time progress. A lot of action on the RamosLaw.com text line. That's 303-713-1043. Appreciate everyone talking about that as well. Brett says, Sean, he tried to spell it 3 different ways. The second was right, by the way, Brett. S-H-A-W-N. So you got it. You nailed it. Thank you. Defense negates offense. Ask Bill Belichick. He'll win this year with defense. He might. But when the New England Patriots, every single one of their Super Bowl teams, not just the ones that won, all of them that got there in the last 10 years, all had a top 8 or higher offense. Just saying. All of them. Defense is great. I would say defense negates bad offense. Defense negates the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans intentionally. The Tennessee Titans intentionally went to Ryan Tannehill. Like, they went to Ryan Tannehill on purpose. It wasn't like an accident. They actually said go in. Mike Vrabel, who, by the way, speaking of, Mike Gardner Minshew has the mustache, but Vrabel looks like the kind of paramedic that will save you from like a car accident by like pulling off the door.
What's up with everyone with the mustaches?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I need to start growing one.
Yeah,
Sean.
I think you should. It's more convenient. You can be more lazy. You don't have to shave as much. It's handy.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try growing one.
Yeah.
I'll grow it out. Might come out orange, but
yeah, you never know.
It is what it is.
Hey, that's part of the surprise. It's part of the beauty, right?
I mean, McManus has got one.
Yeah, you don't know.
Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't anymore. But the one that McManus was.
Yeah, McManus
was
good.
kind of mimicking.
He looked legit.
Yeah, I say you try it.
All right.
That seems like something that should go on social media, on Kistner Radio, on Twitter. Like the day one.
I might lose followers, but
you might lose followers.
All 500 of mine.
Yeah, I actually just preemptively unclicked you as you were talking about it.
Oh,
that's
thanks.
okay. Yeah, no problem. It's all right. Sean, the Broncos are what they are, and it's no surprise they're 7-9 to 9-17 based on their decent defense. I like where you're at, Dave, because I actually said their ceiling was 9-7, but I thought they'd go 7-9. Before the season, I said they would struggle early and progressively get better. That's what's happened. But you're right. They need to start improving on offense, bring back Patrick and Riddick, and that will help. Redshirt lock. Thanks, Dave. Well, you lost me a bit there, but it's okay. I get where you're at. 7-2-0, they've only beaten the Titans and Chargers. Let's see what their defense looks against a real offense with the Chiefs. Bingo. That is where I'm interested too. Let's go over to the RamosLaw.com text line and talk to John. How are you tonight, John?
Hey, Sean, the man of the Renaissance era, Grotar. How are you?
I would be very old were that the case, but I'm good. Thank you.
Wanted to talk about layers and ogres, right? Onions have layers, ogres have layers, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Shrek reference. Kevin would not know what that is.
I wanted to talk about something we've been critical of recently when they were 0-4, or even Elway's draft tendencies.
Sure.
Building this team and the lack of depth. What I see right now, I'm going to talk about specific young players on the defense. So this is defensive oriented.
Right.
Looking through the prism, we were 0-4. We shot ourselves in the foot. I'm a Broncos fan, but 2-0, 2-game win streak going into Kansas City Thursday night at home. Even if we don't win this game, I want to talk about what I've seen from the players that Vic has entitled or given opportunities to.
Yeah.
And A.J. Johnson, obviously. What's the cornerback from Cincinnati that we picked up?
Devontae Harris. He took every defensive snap yesterday.
And if Duke Dawson plays, what I want to say, people have been talking about, not just myself, I've talked about it, the lack of depth because of poor drafting on defensive side of the ball specifically. But what I'm seeing, even if we lose to Kansas City, is I think these players, given the opportunity that Fangio's presented them, are showing themselves, forcing themselves with spots on this roster, not just this year because it's ho-hum, whatever you call this year at the end of the year, but A.J. Johnson maybe supplanted fourth-round pick Josie Jewell. Isaac Yiadom, a third-round cornerback 2 years ago, maybe supplanted by Duke Dawson and Harris, right?
Yes.
I think whether it's in spite of Elway, and I'm not going to give him any credit or say who's worthy of praise here, but what I'm seeing if we lose to Kansas City, at Indy, at the Browns, I'm really excited for the opportunities. Mike's getting on the D tackle, Purcell. Just these young guys. I wanted to ask you. I'm kind of changing my mind. I think we're building depth, whether it's because of the situation starting 0-4 and the changes we made. I wanted to ask you about, kind of changing the culture. Elway's draft picks might be benched healthy. Got this example, healthy scratch 2 games. What are your takes on that, just building depth by play? Thank you.
Thanks, John. And I think they are. I think you brought up a good point. 5 of the 11 starters on defense were guys that were undrafted. Now, you can look at that half empty or half full. You can basically say that the Broncos have done a good job of identifying undrafted players, or you can say that maybe these should have been the guys the Broncos were drafting in the first place instead of the guys they did draft. And the truth is, it's probably a little of column A and a little of column B. But what I want to give them credit for, and what I did give them credit for on Sunday, if you had a chance to listen to the postgame, was the fact that at the very least, in some way, whether it's Elway enabling Fangio, whether Elway himself is making, whoever's doing it, give the Broncos credit for being able to midstream go, this isn't working, I got to try some other guys. I need to see what these other guys can do because this is not happening. Isaac Yiadom cannot start at the NFL level. I don't, and you look at it, and it probably was fair to say, I imagine in the meetings they're like, I don't know if Devontae Bosby can start at the NFL level. Turns out maybe he could. We didn't get to see enough, unfortunately, before he got hurt, but the early returns were good. Maybe Duke Dawson can start at the NFL level. This is a guy that was a second-round pick. Okay. Maybe Devontae Harris can start at the second-round level. Now, we'll see in Game 2. Playing Patrick Mahomes is a little different than playing Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill. Even an injured Patrick Mahomes is better than both of those guys combined. But there is something that they deserve credit for being able to look at their own roster and say, okay, you know what? We might have misread these guys. We thought Yiadom was ready for prime time. He's not. We thought that Shelby Harris could handle nose tackle and make him put on a lot of weight. Well, maybe that was asking too much of Shelby Harris. One of the things that Bill Belichick rightly gets credit for is the fact that what Belichick does in coaching, especially on defense, is really straightforward. It's really not very complicated. He looks at a player, and people wonder, why? How does he find all these guys? Well, there's the funny trick. He kind of doesn't. He looks at a player and says, what can you do well? Now, you're in the NFL, so we know you can do something. Maybe you can't do everything. Maybe you're not an all-around type of player. Maybe you're not an all-around star, but what do you do well? Okay, are you pretty good at rushing up the middle on third down? Okay. Are you good at run defense? No. So Belichick puts that guy in on third down to do one thing, and he takes him out when he has to do the other thing he's not good at. The Broncos, in the last couple of weeks, seem to have done that a little bit, and that's a great sign. And I think they do deserve credit for that, both the front office, because let's face it, first-year head coach doesn't just get to call all of his shots and not have to answer to the front office, and the coaching staff. It is maybe disappointing, like you mentioned, that you have to grab some of these guys off the waiver wire or make these late trades. The Broncos added Harris and Dawson, Devontae Harris and Dawson in trades late. But they did that because they realized they weren't doing well enough. And I've said this about John Elway. I think his drafts have been rather poor to very poor until the 2018 draft. And no, it doesn't look like he hit on Isaac Yiadom as a potential starter in a third rounder, which you'd like. I get that. Not every team does either. Josie Jewell was drafted in the fourth rounder, and I'll be completely honest, I don't think the Broncos for a second thought they were drafting a starter. I think they were drafting a contributor, a guy that was hard-nosed, would contribute on special teams, and they could use him in time to time. I don't think they intended for him to start. I don't think they drafted him going, this guy will be a long-term starter for us. It's a fourth rounder. You wanted him to be a contributor. He's a heady guy. He was a 3-time captain, made tons of tackles. So they've identified someone who might have a higher ceiling, and they're playing him. Great. That's the right choice. But in the last 2 years, Elway has gone away from just getting athletes that he figured they could coach and teach football to, and they're getting football players. And some of them, like Jewell, might have limitations. But if the Broncos put Jewell in situations that he can succeed at, not go cover tight ends, you put him in on rushing downs, play him on special teams, he can be a very successful and helpful player for you. The catch is finding what these guys can do and using them in the right spots. And doing that with just athletes is a lot harder than doing that with guys who at least know how to play football. And yeah, it looks like they missed on Yadam. Okay. But they didn't miss on Chubb. They didn't miss on Sutton. They didn't miss on Freeman. I don't think they missed on Jewell. I think people are, for some reason, thinking they expected him to be a starter. I don't think even the Broncos thought that. I don't think they even necessarily thought that with Deshaun Hamilton. You're looking for a guy that might be your third receiver. I don't think he's worth throwing overboard yet either. Sam Jones didn't work out. Okay, but these are late rounders. They don't always work out. This year you go Fant. I think that's, I wouldn't have picked the tight end first, but I've gone over it many times and shown why I do not think that Noah Fant is a bad player, and I think he's got quite a bit of upside. I think he's not bad right now. Dalton Reisner, great pick. Drew Lock, we don't know yet. Draymond Jones, the third rounder, good pick. Justin Hollins, fifth rounder, good pick. Juwan Winfrey, no, he hasn't done very much yet, but he's a sixth rounder, good pick. They are getting better. Question is how quickly they can turn it around. Can it be this year? We'll discuss it next. We'll see if Patrick Mahomes will be 100% healthy against the Broncos. If he is not, that makes things very interesting. And here's the funny thing about that. If you're the Broncos, at this point, beggars can't be choosers, right? You don't care. If you're fortunate enough to play the Chiefs with one of the most dangerous weapons in the league, hey, great. Good for you. If he's not at his best, that's fortunate. You don't want him to be hurt. But at the same time, it does happen. And if it happens, well, I guess, should happen for you. Hey, you'll take it. You will take it. Over on the RamosLaw.com text line, got quite a few texts here. It is a reaction Monday, so I like getting your reaction on that as well. From the 801, the Broncos are 2-4 and a 2-game win streak. Could easily be up 4-2, tied for first in the division. 2 close games where they're up with 30 seconds left in one game and maybe a minute or so on the other. Different clock management. 2 bad calls by the referees removed. Oh, let's not get into the ref stuff. I get it. Refs are bad. I had a text earlier saying that why wasn't I spending the show complaining about the refs in the Monday Night Football game? And the long story is I don't care.
Sean, I put
the
it
short
on.
Story is I really don't care.
It's on the rundown.
Talk about the Monday Night Football referee.
10:45. You're supposed to complain about the refs.
Oh, sorry about my illiteracy. It comes up every once in a while. Way it goes. Yeah, I'm still not talking about the refs. Look, I've said a million times, you can't pick the refs. You can't pick the umpires. You can't pick the zebras in basketball. They're all going to, get it. If you get wrapped up in that, you're convinced it's all a giant conspiracy. I get it. Not coincidentally, every time there's a bad call, it's because the referees hate your team. And they wake up in the morning from wherever it is and go, you know what? I hate this team, and this is my chance to hose them. Arthur Conan Doyle. I can't believe I'm going to make this reference on Sports Talk Radio. Arthur Conan Doyle is the author of Sherlock Holmes, okay, from the 1800s. Arthur Conan Doyle basically said, and I don't have the quote in front of me, I'm paraphrasing a bit, never assume villainy when incompetence can suffice, okay? That's how I feel about referees in every single sport ever. You want to assume there's some grand conspiracy and they're trying to no. They're just generally it's really hard to do. First and foremost, it's easy for us when you're watching on TV. It's really hard for them to do. So I do have a little bit of appreciation, but you know what? Sometimes they just screw up. And if you're talking about the Chicago game, especially, which some Bronco fans are still sore about because of the rough. Yeah, Eddie Goldman got a call, too, tackling Joe Flacco in a totally legal manner, in which they got a penalty for that, too. The refs just don't know how to call that. That's all. More than a few of these are looking at the refs and complaining about refs. To their credit, even the Broncos didn't complain about the refs. So if the Broncos aren't going to complain about the refs, and they played in it, all of us who didn't play in it, I don't think they need to complain about it either. You can't control them. Don't worry about it. There's a million things in the world you can control and a million things you can't. Relax on the ones you can't. Our text 801 continues, and a more focused defense or a missed field goal that could be 3-3 or 4-2. Yeah, maybe. More focused defense, I think, is the argument. But yeah, the record says who they are. Only one team can win or lose and 2 teams can tie. Right. Those teams are the Lions. But I'm pretty excited about the Broncos. Good. Another one about the refereeing. 801 gets back as his first-time coach, first-time OC, new quarterback, lots of new players, ownership drama. Broncos defense has been improved and offense is starting to find its identity. Is it? As long as they're going to continue running the ball. But more important, the roster is becoming a team lots to be excited about. Okay. Good. From 303-905, Elway would be wise to re-sign Simmons now. Yes. Yes, he would. Now, the problem is it takes 2 to tango. Do you think Justin Simmons would like to sign that right now, or maybe you'd like to, just see what somebody else might offer him before you come back to the Broncos. That could be. Brett texted and said, Lindsay loves all the non-hype, and it's time for Vaughn to show up. Watched LT and Singletary tonight on ESPN or whatever. I love it. You watch TV the way I watch TV. I watched this thing that I liked. What was it on? I don't know. It was on TV. Vaughn needs to be generational. He can be. I understand that Miller's stats aren't where they need to be, but he has actually been a force. Phillip Rivers' first interception, to Simmons last week was completely driven by Miller. He doesn't get a stat for it, but it was. Some of these other things are that he doesn't get credit for in this defense because of the way he's being schemed. I think he's being shortchanged. Is he having an underwhelming season? Yes, he is. Is he the focus of every single team's offense? Yes, he is. And the season's not even halfway through. So let it go. I know the Broncos got a bunch of sacks, by the way. 7 of them. Von Miller got a half of one, but don't think he wasn't still responsible for some of the others, because who's the quarterback going to run away from first? Von Miller. We'll see. Moving back in our Weekend Warriors segment, actually, at one of our things, shouldn't we as listeners vote on one of the top Weekend Warriors from the 4 you have picked? Yes, you should. And as we talked about, that's what we'll do next week. But you got to start it. It's like preseason and then regular season. And then a good one that was texted in that didn't get a chance to mention, Andre Burakovsky of the Avs. We're going to talk about those. Scores in overtime, second straight game winner. We are going to talk about those unbeaten Avs. Nuggets also did well. A couple people defending Joe Flacco, by the way. One person also pointing out, didn't 2-point losses also include a missed field goal in each game? Yes, they did. They sure did. But it doesn't mean that the interceptions also don't hurt. Okay? From the 970, stop. When Denver came out and got Flacco in a rhythm, numbers lie, and Flacco led Denver on go-ahead scores late. Okay. Denver, nothing to do with the line. Denver has no tight end, no number 3 wide receiver, and the play calling is not helping Flacco. Okie dokie. How many of the interceptions were not Flacco's fault? 3 for sure. Okay. Well, cool.
Well, it sucks when your tight end doesn't turn around for the ball.
Yeah.
Lets it hit him right in the back.
But maybe you shouldn't count on a rookie.
Oh.
Just an idea. It's one of the hardest positions in the NFL. That's why they rarely put up big stats as rookies ever. So maybe the Broncos' decision to count on a rookie as their immediate starter was not so wise. That could be. So that happens. And that's fine. Like I said, I think Flacco is fine. He's fine. He's been a solid C. Okay? I'll give him a solid C. I'd like $20 million guys to get at least a B-. But, hey, that's me. If you enjoy it, they sell Flacco number 5 jerseys on NFL Shop. Knock yourself out.
Sean, doesn't he look like Batman? He could be a good Batman.
Yeah. It could be old school Batman, like 60s Batman.
I'm thinking
like
more
bat shark repellent Batman. Yes, I am in.
I'm thinking more
all in.
The Christian Bale type. He looks like he would.
Yeah, but then you got to get laryngitis. Swear to me. It gets old after a little while. You can only do that for so long. Even Christian Bale's like, man, I got to learn to talk again. I'm out after 3 movies. On the bright side, as far as I can tell, we'll all get a chance to be Batman. Because there's like a new one every 8 months, so. Isn't it like the sparkly vampire guy from Twilight now? I think it's the sparkly vampire guy from the Twilight movies now, I think.
Yeah, Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
I don't know about him.
Sparkly vampire Batman. Don't worry about it. I mean, they'll reboot it in a year. They always do.
Maybe at some point we'll get a chance to do it.
That's what I'm saying. Andy Warhol always said everyone gets their 15 minutes. If he was alive today, he would say everybody gets to be Batman.
We just got to be like
once
super ripped and built.
You just got to wait it out.
Yeah.
Oh, no. You got to wait for the weird, like, deconstruction.
Okay.
Like the Joker movie, it'll be weird, but it'll be like how he's, sort of Batman then gets sort of depressed and gets a little doughy. And yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
And then you and I got a shot. Just got to wait it out, man. It'll work.
We'll wait.
Yeah.
I'm always waiting.
For the call to be Batman.
I'm waiting for my chance.
Well, Halloween's coming up. You could just do it that way.
Don't. I might do that.
With a mustache?
Ooh, see, now I got to shave the mustache.
No, you don't.
Well, Batman don't have a mustache.
The Joker did on that old 60s show. They just poured pancake makeup all over it. Didn't matter. Go Google image that and then enjoy your night's sleep. We'll be back. We'll talk about the Avalanche in a moment. not just a reaction Monday for the Denver Broncos. There is a first-place team in this town, and I mean not like first in their division. I mean like first in the whole league. The Colorado Avalanche have 10 points. They are 5-0. One of the few unbeaten teams remaining. The only other one is Buffalo, and they have a tie. Avs are 5-5. They swept their home series, and then they went on the road today and played at a very weird hour for reasons I'm not going to pretend to understand. But anyway, walked in to Washington and, just doubled up the Caps, 6-3, after scoring four goals in the first period. This team looks really, really, really good. Now, it is early. I get that. But they have won with goal counts of 5, 4, 4, 3, and 6. They can score. Big time scoring opportunities, and they're also playing better defense. Mikko Rantanen with a goal and 2 assists. Rantanen is off to a crazy hot start. Zim Kadri, the addition for the Avs in the Tyson Barrie trade, gets on the board as well with another 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists. In that first period, you get balanced scoring. First goals from Eric Johnson on defense, then Nikita Zorov, defenseman. First goal of the year for both of them. Kadri gets his goal. That's his second on the year in that first, and Rantanen then gets one on the power play. That power play, by the way, a little bit changed up in this case, but by and large, you're talking about Rantanen, Landeskog, McKinnon, and then Makar. And in this case, Kadri playing as the forward on that blue line. Whew. It is nasty. It's a very, very, very good Washington Capitals team. They did punch back in the second, got 2 goals, made it 4-2. Alex Ovechkin had a power play goal in the third, but the Avs had 2 of their own. Matt Nieto gets one from Tyson Jost. Nathan McKinnon scores his second to top off the scoring at 6-3. Some of the things for the Avs that look really good, by the way, penalties. They really have not committed very many penalties early on. They've been very disciplined. Now, there are a few warning signs, of course. They're still not a terribly physical team. They need to be better at that. And they still need to be better at faceoffs. They are better at faceoffs than they were last year already. Adding guys like Kadri and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare make a big difference in that. But they're still not where they need to be when it comes to the faceoffs. If they could be a team that was regularly winning more faceoffs than they lost, that team's going to be extraordinarily dangerous. Philip Grubauer gets a little bit of, I wouldn't say revenge, but it may be a bit of revenge over his former team. Stops 29 shots. He is off to a very nice start as well. Grubauer, to my mind, is really sort of the team's X factor. He's the one you realize McKinnon can score. You realize Rantanen can score. You know all about that. But in hockey, a hot goaltender makes all the difference, and a consistent goaltender makes all the difference. So the play of Grubauer this year is going to go a long way to determining what the Colorado Avalanche can do. To make a big, big difference. They will play on Wednesday night next against the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you are curious, you will actually be able, not digging, just saying, you'll be able to watch that game on television because it's on NBCSN. So if you'd like to watch one of the 2 unbeaten teams in the rest of the league, you can do that on Wednesday night. I'm sure I'll do that before I get into the show. Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon each, by the way, have 6 points on the season already. I mean, this has been pretty electric. Cale Makar looks ready to go. Burakovsky looks good. The additions have looked good. Jonas Donskoy has looked good. Bellemare has been doing what they wanted. And maybe one of the bigger revelations, he's not really necessarily getting the credit because Makar's star has been so bright it blots out everything else. Sam Girard has looked like a really good defenseman, both on offense and defense. And it's easy to forget that while Makar is 20, Girard's only 21. If this team can get a little bit more punch from Jost and Comfer, there really aren't a lot of holes. It's exciting to watch. It really is, and it is the early going, of course. But this team, I've said it all summer, I'll continue to say it. They added the right parts in free agency. They didn't necessarily go for stars. They went and got the pieces they needed. They wrote the check they needed to write for Rantanen. This is a dark horse to win the whole thing. I'm not joking. And if you were to ask me, as excited as everyone is about the Denver Nuggets, I'll tell you that the Avs have a much better chance of winning the Stanley Cup than the Nuggets do at winning the NBA championship. Much better. And that's because of the structure of the league. It's very hard for smaller markets in the NBA to cut through. It's very hard in the NBA for teams that don't have superstars that are marketable to cut through. The NHL, yeah, they like the Sidney Crosbys and the Ovechkins of the world, but they don't really care. They just play it out. The Avalanche have a real chance if they can stay healthy and if they can continue to grow. This is a very exciting hockey club. So catch them Wednesday. They will play, after playing Ovechkin and knocking his team off, they will play Sidney Crosby and those Penguins on Wednesday as they try to go to 6-0. It's an enormous opportunity for the Avs. They had a great schedule in the early going with those 4 at home to open things up, get a little comfort level going. But the truth of the matter is now they have started and they've won the first game on a 6-game road string. They come back here with a good performance. Say they win 4 out of those 6. Really, even 3 out of those 6 on the road. They're really in good shape. They're off to a start that could really propel them into something special. It's been fun to watch. Come back, I'll tune in real briefly. We'll check out also the Denver Nuggets playing their preseason game tonight. How did Michael Porter Jr. perform? Little excitement there, too. Talk about him next. You know why October is the best month? It's just the best month. Football is in full swing. Baseball playoffs are going. Hockey is going. Basketball is starting up. The trees' leaves are changing. You get a little bit of snow, a little bit of warmth. It's just the best month. October is the best month. RamosLaw.com text line, 303-713-1043. Try to tell me that I'm wrong. Because you're wrong. October's the best month. That's it. The best one. And speaking of basketball, the Nuggets had their third preseason game. They won. Who cares? It's preseason. You're not really concerned about whether they won or not. You're concerned about how they played. Paul Millsap and Michael Beasley were both held out due to minor injuries, as was Bol as they try to get Bol into shape. That's going to be slow going. I know a lot of people are excited for Bol, and they probably should be, but that's going to be a real slow burn. Just be ready for that. But the Nuggets get it done in Phoenix against the Suns, 107-102. New addition Jeremy Grant, the player they got from the Thunder, and one of the more interesting additions. He's really, really talented. He's likely to be Paul Millsap's replacement in the next season. Nuggets want to get him done long-term as quickly as they can because he could explode. Tonight, 6 for 8, including 2 for 3 from three-point range, 22 points, 3 steals in 28 minutes. Also, it's something the Nuggets occasionally have had some challenges with, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. So it's not as if he's just bombing away from the outside. He's got an all-around game. Interesting player. Gary Harris had 18. Jamal Murray with 16. Murray, by the way, in only 28 minutes, 16 points, 8 boards, 6 assists. If Murray can be even a serviceable true point guard, you don't really want to use him as such. You don't need to. The guy who's really your point guard is Nikola Jokic. And that works. That works fine. Jokic only played for 19 minutes, 4 boards, 4 assists, 4 points. He only took 4 shots. They're not particularly worried about him at this point. But if Murray can make that slight step forward after getting the big contract that he got, Nuggets can be interesting too. Mason Plumlee, 10 off the bench. And the man of the moment, Michael Porter Jr., played 21 minutes tonight, 5 for 10 shooting, 1 for 2 from 3, and 5 boards. A couple of blocks, too, in those 21 minutes. Problem with fouls, got a little handsy, 5 fouls, finishes with 11 points, most importantly, finishes healthy. So, Nuggets are in a really intriguing spot. You look at the preseason, obviously you don't worry a ton about the stats, by and large. There's one stat that I want you to pay attention to if you're going to evaluate the Nuggets properly in the preseason. Watch the turnovers. The Nuggets have more than 70 turnovers in 3 games. That's not good. Now, I know you're rotating in guys that a lot of them won't start. A lot of them won't even make the team. But the Nuggets' ability to pass and their ability to move the ball around, as exciting as it is, can also be a little tempting. A little too tempting at times. It becomes one of the concerns I think come for this season is the Nuggets could get a little wrapped up in their own highlights, the flashy plays. They may try to take the flashy plays as opposed to taking the smart plays. This is still a reasonably young team. That's the biggest concern for me. I want to see them be a little more careful with the ball. And I know it's preseason, so I'm not going to overvalue that stat, but you can't have nearly 25 turnovers a game, preseason or otherwise. You cannot have it happen. The Suns are atrocious. They had 17. Nuggets with 23 tonight. Can't do that. So keep that in mind when you're watching them. That's going to be a big part of their season as well, that they have a very, very high ceiling, especially if Porter Jr. can leap forward. Hopefully, Porter Jr., who will get all the minutes that he can handle as the season moves along. You hope that perhaps that you would see him eventually take that starting 3 spot away from Will Barton, and the Nuggets would be a far better team if that was the case. Barton is better suited off the bench. I do know the Nuggets love him. I know the coaching staff loves him. I know the front office loves him. We've talked about that with Matt Moore, our Nuggets insider. But they would be a better team if Will Barton does not start. Will Barton didn't start, by the way, for the majority of the playoffs. Even the Nuggets realized that just wasn't going to be as good a fit. So we'll see where they go with that. The Nuggets, who started their postseason by playing Portland and beating them by 11, will face Portland again on Thursday. That will be their next preseason appearance. The regular season for the Nuggets comes a sooner than you think. Just a few games after that, Wednesday, October 23rd, against, that's right, Portland. A lot of Portland. It's a nice town, but that's a lot of Portland. So, staying on top of the Nuggets there, looking pretty promising with Porter Jr. To my mind, he's really the guy that is probably the story in the preseason for the Nuggets. And it's not as if they'll go as far as he can take them. He's not. But you talk about the potential X factor. If he is a truly good player for them and early on, wow, the Nuggets could be absolutely a ton of fun to watch. Going back to the Broncos, the 2-4 Broncos now, after a terrific shutout win over Tennessee. 7 sacks, 3 picks. Really, really, really hassling Tennessee and holding Derrick Henry to 28 yards, under 2 yards a carry. The defense looks like it is rounding into form, despite the fact it is still short players. Bryce Callahan is still weeks away from returning. He was one of the Broncos' big money free agents. Turns out that he wasn't over last year's injury. Make of that what you will regarding the Broncos' acquisition choices there. But he wasn't even ready to go from last year's injury. Here's the weird question. Did they need him? Devontae Harris played every snap and looked pretty good. Duke Dawson played 81% of the snaps the week before that. Looked pretty good. Devontae Bosby, before he got hurt, looked really good. Callahan is in an interesting spot. You don't want to rush a guy back when he's not healthy, and I don't think the Broncos will, and it doesn't look like they have to, quite frankly. You hope that he's as good as everyone on the Broncos believes he is, because then the defense can take another leap forward. But the fact that they're getting this done with Devontae Harris, Malik Reed, Alexander Johnson, Mike Purcell, none of those guys were expected to be starters. Not one. And Shelby Harris wasn't expected to start at end. Now he is. 5 starters that the Broncos did not expect to have at any point of the season, let alone 6 games in, have now led them to 2 straight victories. That's a lot to be excited about. So it's been a disappointing free agent showing for Bryce Callahan. It's been a disappointing free agent showing for Juwan James, who might play against Kansas City, but it's probably fair for anyone to say they'll believe it when they see it. He was hurt a dozen plays into the Oakland game. Despite the fact he hasn't needed surgery, he's missed 5 weeks. Not saying that he's not tough or anything of the sort. I'm not a doctor. I know injuries can take a long time. I tore my MCL and PCL in the spring, and it's still not right. So I get it. It takes a long time to make things better. So I'm not calling him out. But it's been disappointing. Those 2 guys have been disappointments. Our friend Chad Brown says that availability is more important than ability. Neither of them have been available. Joe Flacco, to my mind, has been a solid C as a quarterback. Okay? Nothing special. Fortunately, one of the guys the Broncos spent big money on has looked like he's been worth every penny. We'll talk about him next. Out of the four major free agents that the Broncos added in the offseason, Joe Flacco, Bryce Callahan, Juwan James, and Kareem Jackson, one of them has been clearly the best, and that's Kareem Jackson. And now that he is playing at safety, instead of having to play at cornerback due to injury, now that the Broncos have found guys in Dawson, in Bosby, and now in Devontae Harris, who, by the way, played 100% of the defensive snaps opposite Chris Harris, making it so much easier for announcers all over the country, by the way. The Broncos were able to move Kareem Jackson back to safety after he missed the game against Jacksonville with injury. You can imagine the way he's played since, that Jacksonville game might have gone very, very differently had he been able to be there over the middle. He had 10 tackles against the Chargers, including a goal line stop on Austin Eckler that caused a fumble that ended up in a touchback. Makes the pick in this one. Only one tackle, but he was again flying all over the field. Jackson, as well as sort of revelation Alexander Johnson, have probably been the two best Broncos on defense in the last two games. Jackson has been a safety blanket. He's been a security blanket, and he's really been explosive. He's been hitting hard. He's been chasing everything. He's been outstanding as a safety. Broncos are getting their money's worth on that one, which is great, because they're not getting it on Juwan James. They're not getting it on Bryce Callahan. And whether you think they are getting it for Joe Flacco or not, I guess, is highly dependent on your own opinion. Juwan James got 4 years, $51 million. Bryce Callahan got 3 years, $21 million. Kareem Jackson got 3 years, $33 million, including $23 million guaranteed. That, thus far, has been the best free agent investment that the Broncos made. He has been outstanding. And the team's defense has completely changed since he has returned and been able to play safety, where Vic Fangio and the Broncos said they wanted him to be all along. Over on the RamosLaw.com text line, Pal Cuban Benny texts in, a defensive tackle that fits the system, an middle linebacker with some moxie. That makes the defense click, I guess. The middle matters. Go figure. Right. That is funny how it works out, isn't it? And when people have compared the Bears defense to the Broncos defense and wondered, wow, well, what's the difference? How come Von Miller isn't doing the same things? Well, Von Miller doesn't have Roquan Smith next to him. Khalil Mack does. Now the Broncos are a little more stout up the middle. Like I said, adding Purcell and Johnson added 70 pounds. 70 pounds to that front seven. It's a big difference. Over on the 323, Fangio's made the right moves on D relatively early in the season, but the Chiefs are the real test. A zone D won't cut it against Mahomes. You are exactly right. They cannot play a kind of passive wait for the other person to make mistakes defense against Mahomes. I don't care if his ankle's hurting. Their receivers have way too much speed. They have way too much speed, and Mahomes will find them. This will be an interesting game to watch. Want to go over to the Ramos.com text line and talk to Butch. How are you, Butch?
What's John? How's it going?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, good. Boy, 2 weeks in a row get to talk about a Broncos win. Looking forward here. I mean, I'm one of those people that, kind of frustrated that they're not at least 3-3. I mean, I want to say 4-2 because this team just doesn't look like a 4-2 team. I mean, not that great of an offensive line, although showing improvement, certainly better by default, if nothing else, than Tennessee's offensive line. Thank God we don't. I never thought I'd see an offensive line more. As a Bronco fan, I'd say thank God we don't have their offensive line.
Yeah,
but
that one is. They came in with 22 sacks and left with 29. Yeesh.
Right. They. I think the Broncos kind of find themselves in a situation where they could probably miss the playoffs and win just enough games to screw themselves. However, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but then again, I was saying different things when they're 0-4, obviously. I think the best you could hope for, if everything goes your way, is a split between Indy and KC, and then you get that. And, since the 16-game format, the problem with the Broncos, other than digging themselves that huge hole, is the only win total that's ever guaranteed you a playoff spot since the 16-game format is 12 wins. Now, I know mathematically they're still alive with that, so I guess but I don't see that happening.
No,
but,
no. I don't think they're going to run the table, Butch. I'm with you.
No. But to me, it's just kind of weird. I don't know if the offshore, and because I get online stuff and everything, so I don't have to go to Vegas. But the Broncos only a 3.5-point underdog. I mean, if I wasn't a fan of either team, I'd be thinking that looks too easy for Kansas City's end. But get some sacks. I guess he's not as mobile as he would be, I guess, completely healthy, but just not the greatest matchup for the Broncos. But I mean, if they get a split and they're 3-5, and then do you still keep playing Flacco? Last but not least, the thing that frustrated me the most about that game, Shung, obviously great defense. Once again, they can't score to save their lives, but I think it was a 3rd and short, and Flacco could have moonwalked for the first down, and he decided to throw the ball.
Yes.
I know he's not that mobile, but he's not that immobile either.
Right.
I mean, he's not on a walker. I mean, he is 34 years old, and to me, that, if I want to be nitpicky about Flacco, that kind of frustrated me. I mean, come on, man, you could. He's 6'6". He can walk for 4 yards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Thank you, Butch, and I think you're exactly right. That's why I'm with you. I don't look at Kansas City and say, "Oh, wow, yeah, Mahomes is off. They got him, no problem." I don't. I don't think that's the case. I mean, let's be very clear about this. Patrick Mahomes has thrown 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. He has a completion percentage of 63.9% still. His quarterback rating is 111.9. Even in the 2 losses, his quarterback ratings are 91.9 and 96.5. Joe Flacco's quarterback rating on the year is 87.4. Patrick Mahomes is still immensely dangerous, and I still think that the Chiefs are better. Their roster is straight up better than the Broncos. I still think the Chiefs are going to win this game. But you would have asked me Saturday what was going to happen. I'd say the Chiefs are going to boat race them. They're going to win by 20. Now, I'm not so sure. I think the Broncos have a puncher's chance. But I think, Butch, you make a good point. Between the KC game and the Indianapolis game, I think you have to get one of those. You can't drop them both. Have to get one of them. And then you probably have to hold court against Cleveland at home. And Cleveland is a weird team right now. There is clearly talent. There is clearly the ability for them to kind of go nuclear at any time. Either way, they can be atrocious, or they can also be really, really dangerous. So that will be an interesting situation as well. But yeah, it's a game where they have a puncher's chance now. They can get to the quarterback. They can get around in and mess with Mahomes a little bit. He may make mistakes. Talking about it all the time. Sacks create punts. Pressures create turnovers. I don't know how often they can sack Mahomes, but I think they can pressure him now. I think they can. And when it comes to the idea of Drew Lock, I'm going to take the unpopular viewpoint here. I really am. I'm going to stick with my guns. I have said that I think the single most important thing left for the Broncos to discover this year is to find out whether Drew Lock can be your franchise quarterback. Can he be your quarterback of the future? Can he be the guy that holds it down? To me, that is the single most important thing they have to find out. I think the Broncos made a mistake by restructuring Flacco's contract and tying themselves to him for multiple years. But I understand they signed Janovich. If they take that extra money and sign Justin Simmons in the next week or two, okay, maybe I'll have a different look at it. But I look at this team over the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and I don't see them winning a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. I don't know if you do either. But I don't see that happening. So if you don't have the franchise guy, you better go get the franchise guy. The Broncos do not have the franchise guy. The franchise guy doesn't throw 6 touchdowns to 5 picks. That's not the franchise guy. The franchise guy doesn't necessarily look like Patrick Mahomes, who is some sort of magical unicorn. But they look better than that. There's a reason why it's important to pursue the quarterback. It's a lot harder to maintain a defense than an offense. I'll explain why next. It is a reaction Monday, a reaction to the Broncos' second consecutive win. I suppose technically that's a streak. Okay, I'll take it. It's better than losing. So the Broncos get it done 16-0 over the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, who have an offensive line that resembles Swiss cheese, although that might be a insult to Swiss cheese, because Swiss cheese at least can't false start. But they get the job done regardless. And they've been playing very, very well of late. The offense didn't do too much again. Fortunately, they didn't have to. But it's not as if this team was dominant. And that's one of the things that I look at going forward. They are doing well on defense. They have been doing very well on defense. There is nothing to complain about. Given the injury situation, given the new players they're rotating in, over the last 2 weeks, there has been nothing really to complain about. But the Broncos only had 270 yards on offense in total. The Broncos still didn't dominate time of possession, and I assure you they will need to do that if they want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They haven't dominated the time of possession in either of their 2 wins. Despite the fact their defense has been good, the Broncos need to continue to run the ball more, and they need to be able to run it effectively. There is still plenty of work to do. This Broncos offense was 2 of 14 on third downs. You saw how awful the Titans played. Guess what their rate was on third down? 2 for 14. Exactly the same as the Broncos. The Broncos offense isn't all that much better than the Titans. They gave up fewer sacks, and that's incredibly important. But they were in no way, shape, or form dominant. Their running game was better. They also had a problem with penalties again. The Broncos had 12 penalties last week. They had another 8 again. Broncos in the last 2 wins gave up more than 75 yards a game in penalties. That's not something they can afford to do. There are a lot of things that they have to fix. It is exciting that they're winning, and it's great when you can win those games. But here's one of the problems. Success is a far worse teacher than failure. The Broncos coaching staff is going to have to find a way to kind of tamper down this team's expectations a bit. They have to tamp it down. They have to say, hey, look, you guys have won, and that's great. You're playing better. That's great. Don't think you've solved it. You haven't solved it. The number 26 offense in the league when it comes to points. That's simply not enough. They have to find a way to score more points. They have to find a way to be able to control the clock. These are things that the teams simply have to do, and they have not been able to do it yet. So the Broncos can't look at themselves at 2-4, especially at offense, and say, hey, guys, we've got it figured out. You don't. You don't. Teams still are not quaking in their boots to face the Broncos. Okay? They aren't doing it. They're not terrifying teams just yet, okay? Broncos defense in total yards now is up to 4th, 307 yards per game. That's great. That's really good. Yards aren't necessarily the trick, though. Right? I think we understand that. It's points. Now, the Broncos are 7th in points allowed with 106. That is good. Because all but one of the teams that are ahead of them have winning records. So that's something to build upon. The defense looks good, but the offense does not. I went over it before. The vast majority of the teams that are below the Broncos in points scored, 3 of which, by the way, are below in points scored because they have buys. They have a higher, if they hit even their average, their very pedestrian averages will jump over the Broncos when they have the same number of games. And the vast majority of those teams have losing records. And only one of them is more than one game over 500. That's the Bills. So this team still has a lot of work in front of them. And now, for a first-time head coach for Vic Fangio, this is where it gets challenging. It's better to be winning than losing. At the same time, as Emmanuel Sanders very wisely put, we'll see where he stands for over the course of the week on Thursday as well. Sanders said, and I'm paraphrasing to an extent, when you're losing, you feel like you're never going to win again. And when you're winning, you feel like you're never going to lose again. If the Broncos allow themselves to feel that way because they've been winning over the last 2 weeks, they will find themselves losing. And they may find themselves in a slump doing so as well. The Broncos have shored up their biggest problem, which was the rushing defense, and they've done that very, very nicely. That's great. The overall yardage, they're doing better in as well. That's great. All those things are terrific. All those things are items that you can build upon. But they are not a dominant team by any stretch of the imagination, especially because of the way of their offense. Now, I think they're getting a good balance out of Phillip Lindsay and out of Royce Freeman. Flacco has not been particularly good. The nearly 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio is not good. I will give credit to Matt over in Utah who said, for a wacko for Flacco, yeah, he's been okay. I would say serviceable, but the leadership is underrated. Peyton won a Super Bowl with a good defense, maybe great, playing his awful quarterback. His stats were dismal for the Super Bowl 50 run. Give Flacco some respecto, which I don't know if that's going to necessarily trend on Twitter, but I appreciate the creativity, especially at night. But with all due respect, no, he needs to be better than that. He needs to be better than that. Here's one of the reasons. Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl 50 run, and I talked to these players about this, said to a man, part of the difference is even though they know he could barely throw, they're still afraid of Peyton Manning. They were afraid of what Peyton Manning could see on the field and what he could audible to because he could sniff out what they could do. And everyone knew it. Everyone knew it for a decade. With all due respect to Joe Flacco, the whole argument since they won the Super Bowl, after they snuck by the Broncos due to some atrocious defense and some questionable coaching, what's the entire conversation about Joe Flacco? Is he elite? Right? Is he elite? That's been the question everyone's asked since they won a Super Bowl. He was great. All-time great in that run. That was also 6 years ago. But he was all-time great in that run. And ever since then, got his new deal. Is he elite? I'm trying to think of the people who kept telling me yes, he was, because I can't really remember any. Teams are not frightened of Joe Flacco. They are not nervous that Joe Flacco is going to dissect them at the line of scrimmage. So he has to be better. The Broncos find themselves in a good situation right now. Better than they should. Better than they probably deserve. Get it done against Kansas City, and I'm in. I'm in. And I want to be in. So get it done on Thursday. It's been fun tonight. It really has. Great talking about a Broncos win with you. Kelly Agnew is in studio tonight. She's been in the booth with Kevin Kistner. It's nice to have extra people in here. Felt really nice. It was all crowded and everything. My name is Sean Drotar. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Hand it over to our friends at SportsCenter Overnight. This is The Fan Late Night on Denver's 104.3, The Fan.